This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Between two-factor authentication, strong passwords, and a VPN, you try to be in control of how your info is protected. But many other places also have it, and they might not be as careful. That's why LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast for 40% off. Terms apply.
The Rev and the Rabbi. Entertaining and informative. On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Good morning. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Reverend, I must share with you, I was talking to a mutual friend whose name I will not mention, and she tells me that she's going to visit her family up north. And she said, but I'll be working remotely. And I said to her, you know, years ago, before all this technology, people never said, I'll be working remotely. It's like today you have to say that to assure people that you're still working. You're not just going to visit your family. That's not a good enough excuse anymore. I'll be working remotely. I talk to my son all the time, and he's working remotely. And we didn't hear that before. But it's, I guess it's also a form of addiction that if you're accessible through technology, you feel you have to put in some work. You have to be available. How many of us get up in the middle of the night for a host of reasons, but one being to look at the phone?
Yeah, some people don't shut it down. They keep it going, and that's a serious problem. Even when you talk about working remotely, many companies shifted to a split week.
Right.
2 days in the office and 3 days out of the office working remotely because it works for them. They save money in many ways.
Yeah. But this was like, I'm going to visit my parents, but I'll be working remotely.
So you never stop working.
Right. I want you to know I'm not just going to visit my parents. I'll also be working. So I said, well, I feel much better knowing that you're going to share your parents with your phone or computer, whatever.
That's interesting because we have 100 employees and we actually did a survey, and they liked the hybrid of coming in but working remotely. The problem is that they tend to work 24 hours when they work remotely because they may be up doing emails at 2 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the morning. Because it just dismantles any type of order when it comes to their time.
I walked by a store once. It said open 24 hours, and it was closed. So the next day I go in. I said, wait a minute. I walked by this store last night. It said open 24 hours. It was closed. He says, we didn't say open 24 hours consecutively. We just said open 24 hours. So anyway, Rev, you and I had I thought, a very, very insightful, interesting discussion this past week, talking about theology in the sense of replacement theology, covenants, single covenant, dual covenants, sometimes dual covenants. We can also talk about dueling covenants. But what is replacement theology? We hear it used by some groups. We also hear supersessionism. Talk about that.
Wow. It's basically calling the same thing, supersessionism, also known as replacement theology. And then you have the detractors who are fulfillment theologists. And basically, it's a doctrine around the Jewish people. Of course, that's why you're asking this question.
Well, just by coincidence, it's about the Jewish people. That's why.
Because the big question when Christianity was introduced, and they had to wrestle through this in the early church. There's a book in the New Testament called the Book of Acts. And that book is a book of history, and it talks about the wrestling of this newfound sect that seemed to be Jewish, but at the same time had introduced some new doctrine around Christ, around Christos, around Jesus as the promised Messiah of the Old Testament. And now they were trying to figure out, okay, so what place does the law have in this new understanding of faith? And then it came to the point where, okay, well, what place do the Jews as an identity have? There's a wonderful passage in the Pauline letters that says that in Christ there's neither Jew nor Gentile, bond nor free, male nor female. In other words, these distinctions are removed, and we become a unified body from different races, ethnicities, cultural backgrounds, etc. But we come together, a unity in diversity, which was essentially the original covenant promise that God made to Abraham, because he said that he would have a seed, but not only would that seed become a nation, the nation of Israel, but also in that seed would all nations of the earth be blessed. And that's where Christians understand that seed, singular, to be fulfilled in the person of Jesus Christ. So now we have to ask, well, if they asked it back then, what role, what place do the Jews have in this new understanding of faith? And does one covenant, the new covenant that we talk about, nullify the old covenant? Is that covenant that God had with the people of Israel still in place? And there is argument and sometimes very strong contention within Protestantism and even with the Catholic position on this as to whether what's the relationship of Israel with God now that Christianity has seemingly taken its place. Another thing, replacement
Yeah.
theology, that the Christian church is now referred to as a kingdom of priests, a new nation, a new diaspora. So, does that mean that the old covenant is null and void? That the Jews have been replaced by this new entity called the church? Now, the supporters of Israel, especially evangelical Christians here in America, and there are not only evangelical Christians, but organizations established specifically for the support of Israel, because in their theology, they're convinced that they become part of the Abrahamic blessing upon the Jewish
I will bless
people
those who.
by
Right.
virtue of Christ. Yeah,
Yeah.
bless those who bless
Bless
you,
you.
curse
Right.
those who
But let me
curse
let
you.
me ask you. Let me
Yeah.
stop you for a moment, Rev. Why do we have to reach this point where a covenant nullifies another covenant? I remember Pope Francis. God can make many covenants with many people. Why is this so vital to the success of your faith or the viability of your faith that it requires you to completely rescind a covenant that has been precious for thousands of years to the Jewish people? Leave them alone. Why do? Yeah, yeah.
Because of the Jewish religious system, which was based in sacrifice. So the idea of Christianity is that Jesus Christ on the cross became the ultimate sacrifice, totally satisfying the sacrificial system and removing its need for relationship with God. And the communion, the Eucharist, is now established as a ceremony of communion with God through Christ. So Christ became the sacrificial lamb, the ultimate pure sacrifice. And you put that together, because you and I were talking before we started the broadcast about the destruction of the first temple,
Yeah.
Jewish temple in 586 BCE, the Babylonian, but then the destruction of the second temple, which was in 70 AD, and the fact that not only was it the destruction of the temple, but the destruction of Jerusalem and the scattering of the Jewish people into
Right.
nations around the world, which means that the original sacrificial system now ceases. So when you tie that together with Christ as the ultimate lamb, we'll say, oh, okay, this historically begins to make sense that one replaces the other.
Except we Jews declared that when we can no longer offer sacrifices, when the temples were destroyed, we instituted the worship service. We built synagogues because there was no temple we could all come to. So we built synagogues, houses of prayer, wherever we were. I find it very troubling, to be candid with you, that there are others who seek to define what Judaism has been historically. As sometimes, you look through the channels, and all of a sudden I see a program about Messianic Judaism. And the preacher will be talking about how a Jew can embrace Christ and there's no contradiction. And I say, what are you doing? I don't define Christianity for you. Why are you defining Judaism for me? I remember years ago being on a program with Reverend Falwell, and he was talking about the primacy of Christ. And I said, Reverend, I respect that greatly. Do you see those of us who don't embrace Christ as the Messiah but revere him as a great teacher, a great leader, a prophet, are we misguided? Are we on the wrong path? And he said yes.
According to some biblical interpretation, he would and should answer yes.
Yeah.
That's one of the accusations against Christianity, is that Christianity is exclusive. It is central to Christ. But when you think about this, biblical interpretation by many evangelicals regarding the land of Israel, that it was promised by God to the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and prophecy regarding the return of the Jewish people to their ancestral homeland in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 36, was fulfilled in 1948, where we have a literal homeland of the Jewish people that was prophesied, 2 millennia prior. That this is a fulfillment of that. And that's why they're so supportive of the state of Israel.
Right.
And then there's the whole notion of making a distinction between the Jewish people at large and the state of Israel as a political entity.
We're going to come back, take a break now. But one of the things that we are most grateful for the support of Israel, especially during these challenging times. And evangelical community has been tremendous in its outpouring of strength and support. However, there are those who say, well, it's not fully sincere because they're looking forward to all the Jews, the ingathering of the exiles for a different purpose. But we're going to come back. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, so stay tuned for more of The Rev and the Rabbi.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Get lost in the acoustic brilliance of 3D audio that surrounds you. Feel the embrace of the massage seats that adapt to your every move. Experience the warmth of a vehicle that welcomes you as you approach. We could tell you what makes a Lincoln SUV so extraordinary, but don't take our word for it. Take it on a test drive at the Lincoln Summer Invitation, with exclusive offers on now, only at your local Lincoln retailer.
It's back to school season, and Clorox is donating 2 million disinfecting wipes to classrooms across America. Because back to school means things can get a little bit messy. Just ask kindergarten teacher Miss Gibson.
Give me just one Clorox wipe and I'm ready for glitter glue, exploded lunchbox yogurt, peanut butter handprints, runny noses, picking noses, rubbing noses.
Touching noses.
Thank you, Edward. Ooh, nap mats and lockers and tissue boxes. And
Clorox
scissors.
disinfecting wipes. Teacher's #1 wipe. Clean feels good. Based on unit sales data.
Smart Water Alkaline with antioxidant.
Whoa, that's refreshing.
And a 9.5 plus pH for every way you move.
I did take a spin class today.
Restoring like a pro. Smart Water Alkaline with antioxidant. For those with a taste for taste. Grab yours today.
Choice Hotels get you more for your money so you can maximize any road trip. Like with the road trippers we see here in their natural habitat, the breakfast area at a Comfort Inn. Here's a dad teaching his son how to make waffles. Fluffy, golden waffles. There's a mom making sure her daughter eats some fruit to avoid the "I'm hungry" from the back seat. And a sibling standoff over the last muffin. This is the cycle of vacation maximizationing in all its glory. Check into more. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
The Rev
Rev and the Rabbi. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Reverend, we talked about Pastor Hagee this past week because there was a major...
John Hagee, yeah.
Major gathering, Kufi, Christians United for Israel, and a number of Jews attend. And Hagee over the years has been looked at with some question mark. Is he really doing this because he loves us, likes us, or is there an ulterior motive? And I think many evangelicals get that question. Are you really seeking to convert us? And I remember someone once said, if I made a living converting Jews, I would be broke in no time. Talk about that.
I've been trying. I've been trying with you, and it's not getting anywhere. What can I tell you?
But our suspicion is based upon ingathering of exiles means what for the arrival of Christ?
Well, look, everyone has their eschatological perspective, and that's simply big word that simply means the view of the future. What is going to be the end times? How will not the end of the planet, but the end of history as we know it, and a shift into a new age? What will that look like? And there are many different interpretations about that when it comes to Israel and the role of Israel. I personally believe, not even from a theological perspective, which I do have a theological foundation to it, but historically, my faith is rooted in the Jewish tradition and the Jewish history. Also politically, I understand the relationship between the state of Israel and the United States in terms of the need for presence within the Middle East and the problems that we can have if we don't have that kind of a partner in the Middle East.
And the shared values that we have.
Well, sure, absolutely. Political and moral solidarity with the United States, shared spiritual heritage, all that comes into play. But I think when you talk about Hagee, John Hagee, who is what is called a premillennial dispensationalist, all these incredibly long theological terms, it simply means that they believe that Messiah is going to return, and his return is closely tied to the nation of Israel. So that's why we have these prophecy watches to see what's going on in Israel, in the Middle East. How is that a fulfillment of Old Testament prophecy? And many of them started out, Hagee for sure, started out because there is this belief that there's going to be this conversion of many, many Jews, mass conversion of Jews to Christianity, right? And that's part of this closing period, which they call the 7 years of tribulation.
Right.
Now, the Kufi, the Christian United for Israel, has been around for 20 years. And in that 20-year period, many of these evangelicals have shifted from this notion that we've got to convert the Jews to understanding that there needs to be a relationship with the Jews because we have theological foundation, because of historical roots, because of the political and moral solidarity. So many of them have shifted. And it's really about supporting the nation of Israel and seeing themselves as brothers.
Yeah.
Now, how do we unpack that theologically? That's where there are differences of opinion, differences of interpretation. But I think it's become, for the most part, not all, but for the most part, a genuine solidarity, a genuine relationship of support.
When members of my community say to me, well, how can we be enthusiastic about Hagee and others if we think there's some kind of hidden ulterior motive? And I say to them, who cares? You could have all the motives you want, but in the meantime, you're getting support. You're abandoned by those you thought were allies. You now have support for those who you didn't think we are allies, and they have an ulterior motive. And, like Ed Koch used to say, when the Messiah arrives or arrives again, you're going to ask him, is this your first time here, your second time here? Right?
Yeah.
Right. But in the meantime, if we're going to start probing the heart and saying, why are you helping me when you're hurting? You're going to hurt a lot longer and die a lot sooner because you're not allowing the aid to be administered. You keep questioning the person. So tell me why you're doing this. Why are you helping me?
Hey, look, if we're in the trenches together,
Yeah.
man, I just want to know we're on the same team. We could unpack the details of that some other
Yeah,
time, but
but
as
in the
long as
meantime,
we
help
got each
me. I'm
other's back,
drowning.
that's
Yeah,
right. We got each other's back. That's what I want to know.
So
You're absolutely right.
And the other part of it is this, and I've said this again to my community: if you're strong in your faith, if you believe as a proud Jew in the tenets of Judaism, what are you worried about? What does it matter that somebody else may have, a missionary design upon you, wants to somehow change your belief? You're not changing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
real answer to all of it is you be strong and let the other person be strong. And hopefully you can develop a relationship where, look, we disagree severely, but in the meantime, we are dedicated to the preservation of our own and also of the other. We're not here to destroy a relationship that is precious to us.
That's why it's called shared values. And let me
Right.
just get this in before we run out of time for this segment. But you as a Jew, don't you at times have problem, and haven't you had problems with the way the state of Israel, the political entity, called the state of Israel, has handled certain issues, whether when it comes to foreign policy, when it comes to
So,
Gaza? Haven't you disagreed
of
with
course,
that?
I disagree with things America has done. And that's the beauty of living in a democracy, that you have the right
That's
to
the point.
believe, the right to disbelieve, the right to agree, to disagree. Look, the Jewish people are anything except monolithic. And
Right,
we
right.
don't. There's no unanimity of opinion.
Yeah.
We've never enjoyed unanimous votes, but there is the opportunity to really have some very, very direct debate, and that's the beauty of living in a country where you can do that.
Well, it's important that you make that distinction because others fail to make that distinction and feel that all Jews agree with how the state of Israel is handling some of these issues that are going on in Gaza and with
Look,
Hamas and with Iran.
I, look.
It's important that you
Israel
make a
has
distinction.
every right to be a Jewish state. Israel has every right to defend itself, and when attacked, it has to respond. It can't, turning the other cheek is, I know, a doctrine in some faiths. In Jewish tradition, we're afraid when we turn the other cheek, we get slapped on the other side. So, if someone, it's written very clearly in Jewish law, if someone is coming to kill you, make sure you eradicate the person before he kills you. You don't
Well,
have
on
to
my
become
face, and I think he was talking about the face. I only got two cheeks. So what happens when I run out of cheeks?
I could say something, but it's a family program, so I'm
Yeah,
not.
it's a
I'm
family
not going to go
program.
there.
That's why I
All
said
right.
on my face.
All right, we're gonna end this segment, and then we're going to come back with more discussion of a host of issues.
Right here on the Rev and the Rabbi.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Grandpa's here.
Hank's always helping out, Grandpa style. Now he's treating his prostate cancer with help from Xtandi enzalutamide. Xtandi 40 milligram tablets treats men with prostate cancer that has spread to other parts of the body and responds to a medical or surgical treatment to lower testosterone. Xtandi may cause serious side effects: seizure, a brain condition called PRESS, allergic reactions, heart disease that can lead to death, falls and bone fractures, swallowing problems, or choking that can lead to death. Stop Xtandi and get medical help at once if your face, tongue, lip, or throat start swelling. Tell your doctor at once if you faint, have a seizure, quickly worsening headache, decreased alertness, confusion, vision problems, chest pain or discomfort, or shortness of breath. Xtandi can cause harm to an unborn baby or miscarriage. Use birth control during and 3 months after Xtandi. Common side effects include muscle and joint pain, feeling unusually tired, hot flashes, constipation, less appetite, diarrhea, high blood pressure, bleeding, falls, fractures, and headache. Talk to your doctor and visit Xtandi.com.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Commercial Insurance. Business owners, meet Progressive Insurance. They make it easy to get discounts on commercial auto insurance and find coverages to grow with your business. Quote in as little as 6 minutes at progressivecommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. Coverage provided and serviced by affiliated and third-party insurers. Discounts and coverage selections not available in all states or situations.
Mic check. 1, 2. Are we recording? Hi, I'm Michelle Bernstein, an award-winning chef, restaurateur, and mom. I have a lot on my plate, including my psoriatic arthritis symptoms. That's why I was prescribed Cosentyx. It helps me move better.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for people 2 years of age and older with active psoriatic arthritis. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some were fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your rheumatologist about Cosentyx.
BTW, FYI. Visit Nexplanon.com RN to learn about Nexplanon. It's an adjustable implant, 68 milligrams radiopaque. Or ask your HCP IRL. Okay, TTYL.
The Rev and the Rabbi. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Reverend, last week on the Jewish calendar, the 17th day in the Hebrew month of Tammuz, a fast day. You fast from morning to evening. And the reason for it is because we look at the destruction of the temples, but that didn't happen overnight. It started with a breach in the walls surrounding Jerusalem. And I was telling people, do you ever have a crack in your windshield? And it starts with a crack, and suddenly the crack expands. And before you know it, you have a windshield that is severely damaged. And I think there's a lesson for us looking at the hatred of today. It all starts with a crack. It could be a wise crack. It could be some hateful comment. But it doesn't happen overnight. Anti-Semitism, we've seen over the years, it's grown. And sometimes you don't think it's going to grow. But be wary of that crack, that incipient stage where all of a sudden you realize, if this continues, we're going to see destruction. And that's what the 17th of Tammuz, culminating with the 9th day of Av, Tisha B'Av, where we fast, a longer period of fasting. But we say this, look at the 3-week period, which we talk about the slow development of this hatred, the culmination with a catastrophe.
It's interesting because there are 2 iterations of that statement. The one that you're talking about goes back to Emerson back in 1837 when he was making a journal entry. He wrote these words that you said, there's a crack in everything that God has made.
Right.
Much later, Leonard Cohen, in one of the songs that he did called Anthem, I don't know if you remember that.
Leonard Cohen was before my time.
But he, in the anthem, he quoted, he said, there's a crack in everything. But he said, that's how the light gets in.
Right.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
Right.
And I think it's true. I mean, from the crack in the Liberty Bell,
exactly.
That symbolizes the establishment of an independent nation of America, to some of the other things that you've applied it to.
So,
it's an interesting idea, yeah.
There's a story, Jewish story, it can be used by everyone, that someone went to a jeweler and there was a crack in the stone. And the jeweler said, look, I can't remove the crack. What I can do is form a design with it so you can still wear the ring. And I think the message for us is there are certain cracks you can't remove. There are scars of life you can't, erase. But you can try to take them and form a design so the life still has meaning. So after the destruction of the temples, when people thought the Jewish people are going to disappear, what did we do? We built schools of learning outside of Jerusalem. We built synagogues, houses of worship. But the crack also enabled us to have the light of learning come in. So
Wow, this is a great sermon that you got here, because it's a powerful poetic metaphor for human brokenness. We in our faith tradition, we hold that all humans enter the world in, a broken condition, and that's why there's a need for salvation, redemption, and all of that. But a crack is a sign of that something has been stressed. Really, they don't appear in isolation. They result from pressure, from trauma, from
yeah,
tension or age. And so that's a beautiful metaphor, powerful metaphor. Whether loss leaves a crack in your heart, you know what I mean?
right.
Betrayal, when creates a crack in trust, uh, disappointment, and we can go on and on with it as metaphor.
Yeah, and
But notice, a crack doesn't mean collapse. I think that's important.
yeah. Unless you allow it to collapse,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
gotta do what you can to prevent the crack from going any further and doing more
Right.
damage. Right?
Yeah. Back to your windshield. Yeah,
Yeah,
back to
yeah.
your
Back
windshield. You
back
have
to
to
the
do
windshield.
something. Yeah.
So I think that's where faith plays such a pivotal role in saying to us, there's a tomorrow, there's a page 2, there's another chapter you can write, that you shouldn't just retreat from life. Loss is irreparable, but it doesn't mean that it's the final chapter.
Is that why the temple was so important? That it was central to Jewish life? That after its destruction by the Babylonians in 586 BCE, let me get it right. It used to be BC, but now before the Common Era.
Yeah.
You sought to rebuild it, only to have it destroyed again. Yeah.
So if you look at the Talmud, which is the explanation of the Torah, it's the oral law. There are 2 different sets of the Talmud. One was written in Jerusalem, and one was composed in Babylonia. The more authoritative of the 2 is the Babylonian one. And you think, wait a minute, you're saying that Babylonian Talmud has more weight to it, more gravitas than the Jerusalem Talmud? Yes, because the schools of learning in Babylonia were so outstanding that the level of scholarship was even greater than that of Jerusalem. What does that say about taking a crack and forming a design? And
That's brilliant.
Right? So
for us, go ahead.
No.
Finish your thought.
So, I think back to September 11th, and Commissioner Cassano, who, by the way, is a loyal listener to the program, he and I have had many discussions about September 11th, and the remarkable quality is that you had people whose hearts were broken, and yet with their hands, they continued to rebuild. A department was decimated. 343 died, and you have, related illnesses where people have died since then. And yet the department was able to regain its strength because it was determined not to allow that to be the final chapter. And I think,
isn't that another? Go ahead.
No, that's the message. The final chapter, we have to make sure. Look, the Talmud starts on page 2. There's no page 1. You have to make sure that you begin again. Not easy, but if you feel life is worth living, if you really feel you want to honor a legacy, which is a whole other discussion about what is legacy, but there is this incentive. You're incentivized to start writing again, start living again.
But isn't that the way it should be? There should always be hope. You and I have talked about the fact that we are prisoners of hope. We believe that there's always an opportunity, a new beginning. In fact, the numerical systems within Judaism, right? 8 is a number of new beginnings, right? So there's always this idea of starting over again, no matter how things get, no matter how bad things are. There's always the opportunity to redeem the time and to recover and to begin again.
Reverend, I was with you and your wife at the Christian Cultural Center. You had lost a child. And I remember you spoke. You gave a talk about being in a boat, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Here you were with a heart that was torn apart, and yet you were able to give a message of hope to others, even though you were so deeply wounded. And I said, wow, what a profound lesson that is. That's a lesson in courage. You know, your inside is not the same, and outside you're able to deliver a message that inspires others to say, look at what the Bernards went through, and here they are in church praying to God and saying, this is not the final chapter.
I appreciate that, Rabbi. It was great having you there for your support. And that's what friendship is all about as we walk through the crisis of life. And that's what crisis does. It's not the end. It just reveals the cracks. This is what needs to be strengthened, to be shored up. I think that's an important idea.
Yea,
That we
yea,
should
though I walk
use
through
to
the
shape
valley,
how we
right?
see life.
Yea, though I
Of the
walk, I
shadow
shall
of
not
death.
fear.
Right.
Right? Yea, though I
Mhm.
walk through the valley of the shadow, I shall not fear. But I got to tell you, I've often disagreed with that because I find it's death that we don't fear, but the shadow of death we do fear. The dying, the indignity that often precedes it. But no matter how you interpret the phrase, when you're holding on to God, God holds on to you as well. And you're able to walk through, you may limp through, but you're able to get through. And you know, look, all of us, no one goes through this world without scars, without scratches, some worse than others. There's an old phrase that life is so difficult that nobody gets out of it alive. Right?
Yeah.
Right? But I mean, you showed all of us something that we needed to see and hear, that we can't give up. Religious tradition doesn't allow us to succumb to passive resignation. You can't walk away from living.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We are prisoners of hope. We've
Yep.
always have to live that way, Rabbi. So thank you.
All right. Well, we're going to come back. We got more
Yeah.
of the Rev and the Rabbi.
Right
You know,
here
for those
on-
listening, and we know there are millions out there, we've had no guest. We are the guest because you
The
and I
whole show?
Yeah, you and I decided that we're going to have a program. No one else, just the two of us talking some theology, talking whatever it is, but just talking to each other. Hopefully, there's a lesson there that you can be different, and you can still be in the same book. May not be in the same page, but you can be in the same book and talk to each other.
Yeah, so stay tuned for more conversation where we're going to dig into conversations about our young people right here on the Rev and the Rabbi on Red Apple Radio Networks.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 350 plus programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Life is a workout, and Smoothie King is here to help you power through. Whether you're crushing morning miles or sprinting through back-to-back meetings, give your body the energy, protein, and power it needs to help you conquer your goals. Only at Smoothie King.
The Rev and the Rabbi. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Reverend, when I was growing up, my parents came to this country and they became citizens. I remember walking with my father one day, and he opened his jacket to show me that in the inside pocket, he had his citizenship papers. And, sorry, on a special occasion, he would bring those papers with him. He was proud of being an American. And I'm looking now at a study. 58% of the U.S. adults say they are extremely or very proud of being an American. 58. That's an all-time low. Why? What do you think?
Good question. Good question. I mean, while we're reflecting on your dad, I had to reflect on my own journey.
Mm-hmm.
I came to the United States I was a kid, 1957, September 30th. And within a few years, yeah, I got into the school system, but I established my citizenship, became naturalized citizen
Mm-hmm.
of the United States. And I will tell you, I was proud of that day. There was just something about the American ideal, even as a kid, I embraced. And it was a time that there was a lot of upheaval, especially around racial issues and class issues, because I went right into the 1960s, where we had every revolution imaginable, protests against the Vietnam War, the Civil Rights Movement, riots, I mean, college campuses, sexual revolution,
Mm-hmm.
the influx of music from around the world that created a music revolution, the Jesus revolution that was going on. Yeah, it was an interesting decade. So when you ask, about the decline in American pride among young people, and I'm not talking about the kind of extreme nationalism that we are seeing in our country right now. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, and I think we're talking about the same thing. We're just talking about proud to be an American, the American idea, what it stands for. Unfortunately, there was a 2023 Gallup poll that found that only 18% of adults aged 18 to 34
Mm-hmm.
said they were extremely proud to be American. And that compares to 50% of those over age 55. So the younger
Yeah. Yeah.
generation, are the ones who are saying, I don't know if I'm proud of this country. And they're pushing back. And I think we're in a season of cyclical social, political, and spiritual upheaval
Mm-hmm.
where we begin to challenge the status quo. It happens cyclically. We did it, back in the 1960s. And here we are again.
Political analyst Hank Scheinkoff was with us last week. And one of these
Mhm.
things he said, which really had an impact, is that many young people today don't believe in sacrifice. They want it to be given to them. And if you don't believe in sacrifice, if you don't sacrifice is sacrosanct, then you don't appreciate the birth of America, because it wouldn't have happened. We wouldn't be here unless people were willing to sacrifice. So if sacrifice means nothing to you, well, so big deal. So we have America. The other thing the poll found is that those in the Republican Party had a greater sense of pride in America than the Democrats. So pride became political. If your party was in power, probably pride was heightened. If your party was not in power, that America was not that good.
Well, different values
Yeah.
between the two parties. You have Republicans who represent conservatism, and you have the Democrats who represent progressivism. One wants change and to
Mm-hmm.
move things forward, and the other one is trying to preserve the glory of the past. But you hit on something here very important when we think of the reasons for the decline. One of them is an increased awareness of historical injustice. Young people are exposed to more information about systemic racism, police violence, colonialism, slavery, and economic inequalities. And they want a cause. They want something to fight for. So they're re-examining, national myths and founding narratives. And they're deciding, well, hey, I wasn't told the whole truth. Some of it was whitewashed. Some of it was not the way it was presented to me. And many of them, because I speak to them,
Mm-hmm.
are bothered by that. And they're challenging the establishment for preserving this lack of clarity and accountability from the past.
What I find very troubling is I think of the story of a emigre from the former Soviet Union who arrived here, and press was there to greet him and others who finally arrived in America. And the question was, how was life in the former Soviet Union for you? And he said, can't complain. He said, really? You're telling me that you came to America and in the Soviet Union, you're saying can't complain? He says, that's right. So if you can't complain, why'd you come to America? He You say, well, here I can complain. And for me, the ability to complain in a free land should make you burst with pride.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't do it there, you can do it here. And the fact that you can fight for your cause should make you proud of being an American. And for some reason, I see like when the national anthem is played, there are some who just, they don't sing the words. They just look down, look at their cell phones. I'm talking if you go to a game, right? Not everybody is observing that moment to its fullest. And again, it's in the younger people, the ones who, for reasons you gave, just don't appreciate the blessing of being in America. Going back to our parents, I became naturalized. I was angry because I said to my mom, I could never be president of the United States because of that. She says, well, you can become Secretary of State like Kissinger. Right. But here we are, and look at we do a program here, week after week. I don't know in how many of those countries, like the former Soviet Union, you could have a rabbi and a reverend. You could have people of different faiths being on the air, saying what they want to say without imposition by others, without interference. It's a great country. You don't like the radio. Turn off the radio if you don't like what's said. You can turn it off.
But it's not just what you say, Rabbi. It's also how you say it. We speak in a very civil and respectful way, even when we disagree with each other, and that's what's missing in our society. I don't want this segment to end without a word of encouragement because, as I mentioned earlier, these things are cyclical. My grandchildren, we have these conversations, social, political, and spiritual conversations. And they say, should we worry? I said, well, yeah, there should be a degree of concern always. There's a difference between worry and concern. You shouldn't worry. You should be concerned about these issues. But these are cyclical. In the 1960s, as I pointed out, it was the civil rights movement. Today, it's Black Lives Matter, racial injustice activism. In the 60s, we had anti-Vietnam War protests. Now we have anti-war, pro-Palestinian, climate protests. We had in the 60s rejection of conformity. I remember because I was part of the desegregation program, bust out to white schools from Brooklyn, Queens. Now we're talking about identity, deconstruction of traditional norms. Back then, it was distrust of government for what? Vietnam, Watergate. We had that. Now we're distrusting institutions like Congress and the police and media. So in both eras, in both time periods, young people demanded that America live up to its ideals, freedom, justice, equality. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I celebrate that. It's how we express it. I think that becomes important.
And you know what? When we participated in demonstrations, we marched for civil rights. We marched for different causes. I remember marching for people to be allowed to emigrate from the Soviet Union to be free, marching for Israel, whatever the environment, whatever the cause was. You weren't guaranteed success, but you felt the cause was worthy of your commitment. And I think that's what you got to celebrate, that you have a commitment and you can follow it even if you don't succeed. Even if you don't cross the finish line, at least you're in the race. Rev, this has been an interesting program. You want to conclude? This will be the last thought.
Yeah, I just want to point out that there are differences between then and now because we didn't have constant access to social media, global news, outrage cycles. We didn't have, fragmented sense of identity and information that we have in our world today. So there are quite a few differences that make this period more intense. I wish we had the time to talk about it, but there's a wonderful passage in the prophet Daniel that points to all of these things that we're talking about. Maybe next time we'll get to do it.
All right. Look forward to being with you next week. And in the meantime, have a good week, even while you're working remotely.
Yes, even while you're working remotely at 2 a.m, right? So to all of you, our listeners, thank you so much for joining us here every week for great conversation. We hope you're inspired and informed from the Rev
and the Rabbi.
God bless.
Thanks for listening to The Rev and The Rabbi. You can hear The Rev and The Rabbi Sunday mornings at 7. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?